Any way you want it done? What do you want me to do to him?
I want you to do whatever you do. You're looking at someone who's raped and sodomized.
Shocking audio of a Tennessee mom allegedly trying to hire a hitman to kill her ex-husband, as she makes shocking claims against him in the recording. This is who she thought was a hitman. He's actually a member of law enforcement, and she met him once again this week, but in a completely different setting, in a courtroom.
I was informed that my role would be to go undercover and portray myself as a hitman for hire.
This is who is the alleged target of her plan, her ex-husband who sat in court and listened to the entire thing. But the story of the Solomon family and the controversy that surrounds them goes back years. We'll dive into the allegations of murder, sexual abuse, and domestic violence that allegedly led to the point where this woman thought it was time to hire a hitman. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Let's break down what was a shocking day in court in Tennessee this week. The first time that we've seen Angelia Solomon in court since she was arrested for allegedly trying to hire a hitman to kill her ex-husband, and she heard the audio recording that put her behind bars. Here is Angelia Solomon entering the courtroom for a bond hearing. She also pled not guilty. She gets emotional as she saw members of her family in the gallery. But also in the gallery was her alleged target had she actually hired a hitman, her ex-husband, Aaron Solomon. To fully understand this story and how we got to this point, there are so many layers that go back over years, and we're gonna break that down. But first, let's talk about this alleged murder for hire plot. Police in Tennessee say they learned of an alleged plan by Angelia Solomon, who also goes by Angie, to hire a hitman to kill her ex-husband, Aaron Solomon. Court records show that Aaron filed for divorce in 2013 from Angie. He was a former TV news anchor in Nashville. He left the broadcasting business in 2011. The Solomons had 2 kids, Grant and Gracie. We'll talk about both of them in just a moment. Court records show that when this couple separated, it was the furthest thing from an amicable divorce. Court records show that Aaron sued Angie for slander, and in those records, Angie accused Aaron of physically, mentally, and sexually abusing her and their children. Aaron's never been charged. He does deny the allegations that Angie has made against him. Aaron's lawsuit was eventually dismissed, but in those documents, the judge wrote, quote, "The divorce court found Ms. Solomon's allegations of abuse lacked merit." On April 11th of this year, police say that Angie made arrangements to meet with someone that she thought was a hitman in the parking lot of this mall in suburban Nashville. Police say there was a confidential informant with the supposed hitman, and the 3 sat in a car in the parking lot. But it wasn't a contract killer who Solomon allegedly met with. It was this agent with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation who recorded the entire conversation he allegedly had with Solomon in the car. And that entire recording was played in open court. There are 2 important storylines that you need to understand to get context of what led to this point allegedly. The first is that Angie has been vocal for years with allegations against Aaron Solomon saying that he sexually abused their now teenage daughter, Gracie. And Gracie has made those public accusations as well. She is seen in this video that was posted on May 12th, 2021. It is 18 minutes and 16 seconds long, and it was posted publicly on YouTube from the account Freedom for Gracie.
I hate my dad. I'm absolutely terrified of him for everything he has done to me, my brother, and my mom. I don't want to call him my dad anymore. He's never listened to me. He has hurt me sexually, physically, and mentally. He has caused so much pain for my family. He has tried to manipulate me and has manipulated others, and it has worked. Ever since I was born, my dad has done awful things to me. First, he never let my mom bathe me. It was always him. So by not letting my mom come in at all, it meant that he could do anything to me. I would always tell my mom I felt like I was more like a wife to him instead of his daughter.
Gracie also went with her mom, echoing those allegations on network television shows and on podcasts. No criminal charges have ever been filed against Aaron related to the allegations you heard Gracie make in that video. And those aren't the only allegations that Gracie and her mom have made against Aaron Solomon. They also accused Aaron of being involved in the death of Gracie's brother, Grant. Grant was a stud high school baseball player in Tennessee. On July 20th, 2020, he was 18 years old and he was killed.
My son's truck backed over him and it's rolled over him and dragged him into the ditch and it's on top of him. He's trapped under the truck and somehow it drug him underneath it.
That's the 911 call that Aaron Solomon made after police say Grant died in a tragic accident. We're hearing this on a podcast that was posted by digital journalist Nick Shepard with Angie Solomon last year. This happened at a baseball training facility. Investigators say that he was run over by his own truck in the parking lot. The only witness to what happened was Aaron Solomon. Now, these are pictures from police that Angie posted on a website calling for a deeper investigation. Aaron has never been charged in the death of Grant Solomon, but the fact that he was there fueled opinions that Grant's death should have been investigated further and not enough was done. Those theories were fueled even more by public accusations by Angie. She went on those podcasts. She went on television programs like News Nation to talk about these claims she made against Aaron Solomon. And even though Aaron has denied the accusations that Angie's made against him and charges have never been filed, this is a case that has received a ton of attention in the Nashville area, and once again it was in court this week. In the recording with the undercover officer that was posing as a hitman, Angie says the reason that she wants to allegedly kill Aaron is because she believes that he raped their daughter and killed their son. She also says that there's a large network of people covering for Aaron.
You keep saying they. Who is it?
It's a good up network here. So that's part of who we operate with. That Goodwood network is involved in sex trafficking, pedophilia. They traffic Gracie. They traffic. He's involved. So they have a much larger industry than just being attorneys. The governor, the state attorney general, lady, pastors of large congregations and churches. Children are being taken, they're being drugged with ketamine, they're being raped and molested, and they don't know, they can hear, but they can't move.
In that recording, the undercover then asks Angie what she wants him to do.
Well, what do you need from me?
Well, I understand you do certain work. What I've seen the last, I have my own people working for justice. The problem is what I've seen is that what he's proven in the last 6 months, because I filed child support and then instead I dropped it. So I could drop it, they can act us again. And what I've found out is, he's got teeth in it, he's never let it go. He either has to be just like a counselor wants him. It's like he belongs to prison or he belongs under the ground. And
so of those two choices, in prison or under the ground, you want which one? Okay.
My daughter's not going to go with me.
And Agent Atkins, it was hard to hear there. What did she say in answer to your question?
Under the ground.
Angie then allegedly tells the undercover officer where Aaron possibly lives, where he works out, and when he might be at those locations. Then in a shocking moment, the undercover asks Angie how she would allegedly want her ex-husband killed, fast or slow.
You want him to know where this is coming from?
No.
Okay.
No. And what I want is no way. I mean, just tell me. Because I could have done this a long time ago in Grant. But right now, I have to worry about this. Just tell me I didn't do it because I didn't want to go to jail if they have to have me. So it just can't be traced back, right?
All right, that's why we're going through this out. After you get out of here, you'll never see me again.
Are you mean?
Am I mean? I can be mean. You want me to be mean? Okay.
thinks he's about 5'8", with shoes on, heels. And he thinks he is God.
Okay, so slow is better than quick.
Yes.
All right.
He likes to oppress, and he likes to wield power over women by drugging women.
There's also an incredible dynamic that's playing out in the courtroom as this audio recording's being played in open court, because you have Angie Solomon sitting at a table with her defense. Then across from her is that TBI agent who she originally thought was a hitman that she was going to hire to kill a person sitting a couple rows behind her. We saw Aaron Solomon sitting in court. He has appeared at multiple court appearances involving his now ex-wife, and we also know that their daughter Gracie was in the gallery as well. The next part of the recording is key because it's about how Angie says she would allegedly pay for this contract killing.
Something like this, about 5,000. Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but he's not worth it.
Yeah, well,
Sorry, but let me just tell you something.
it's a risk I'm taking.
Angie allegedly then eventually promises that she'll pay the undercover double the amount of upfront payment after the job's done, and she handed over her vehicle registration as an upfront payment. She also told the undercover that she was doing, quote, vigilante justice. Shortly after Solomon met with the undercover in the mall parking lot, she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder for hire. At yesterday's hearing, she pleaded not guilty. In court, we also heard from a friend of Solomon's. Her name is Melanie Hicks. We noticed her name in court documents as one of the defendants when Aaron sued Angie for slander in that now dismissed lawsuit.
Her roots are here in Franklin. She has her friends and support system are here. Her daughter attends school here and is very supportive of her daughter. Her daughter is very rooted here as well. She has a 4.5 GPA at school, and Angie provides that sole foundation for her. Also, their son, her son is buried, Grant is buried about 5 minutes away, and Angie tends to his grave regularly. So he is here as well.
Along with pleading not guilty, the judge lowered Solomon's bond from $500,000 to $250,000. The judge said if she's released, she will have to be on house arrest. As Solomon left court, we saw her get emotional. She looked to someone in the gallery and mouthed, "I love you." Joining us now, once again, to talk about this story is digital journalist Justin Shepard. On social media, you may know him as Just in the Nick of Crime. Thanks for taking the time to be with us once again. I know you've covered the story of the Solomons for several years. Today, we have this court hearing at the time of this recording today. And what stood out to me was this audio recording of the undercover who's posing as a hitman, speaking with Angie Solomon. And it just seems like it's a textbook example of what undercovers do to get payment, to prove that it's more than just words and it's something that someone would actually want to do. And I just wonder I know she's pleaded not guilty, but like, where does this case go from here for her defense?
Well, I mean, I think that nobody, expected her to plead guilty to this. But this is one of those things where, yeah, you're exactly right. They did the traditional cop thing. They made sure to confirm information. I don't have the transcript in front of me, but something along the lines of, you do realize that this means that he will be gone. He's not coming back. And she's like, yes, I understand that. No, I don't have the money to pay you right now, but I'll give you double when it's done. And by the way, here's the title to my car. And it's a pretty tough. I mean, they have it right there on tape with the cop doing it. It's going to be a pretty tough defense for her.
Yeah, and I know she's facing what could be years behind bars. We'll see if there's a plea eventually when it gets to that point. Surprising part too was that apparently Aaron Solomon, her ex-husband, was not the only person that police believed that she was interested in hiring a hitman to take someone's life. What do we know about the two people that police say she also was looking at hiring a hitman for?
Well, we don't know a lot because they didn't name them at this point in time. But what I understand from one of my sources who will be more than happy to talk when they're at a point that they're able to do so. I had made a couple of guesses on who it might have been, and apparently my guesses were incorrect. And then basically what I kind of said to him was like, can you give me any idea? And he said, all I can say is it's some very high powered people in the state of Tennessee. And it sounds like it was alluded to politicians.
Oh, wow. Because then you wonder, I know she's facing the one count of solicitation, murder for hire, but when you get into the world of I don't know if it was hiring a hitman to take out a politician, you just wonder if there's going to be more charges down the line in this case if that information comes out and it's true.
Well, I mean, we have that, already in the recordings, right? That she was going
Yeah.
to, look at two other people. So I guess since we don't know the names at this point in time, it's going to depend on who they are. But if they are pretty high powered, then yeah, I think that we're going to see additional charges. What I kind of question though is if this is supposed to be about justice for Grant and Gracie, number one is why aren't we just, and I'm not condoning this at all, just for the record, just
No.
having a discussion here, but why not just target Aaron then? And then why these other two people? And if you were going to try to do something like this, which is a big deal, I mean, trying to hire somebody to take the life of another person, that's a big deal, murder for hire. And to do 3 people kind of all in one go, like, that's not gonna raise any eyebrows. It's a recipe to get caught.
Right. And also, I think an interesting part of this too was apparently the down payment, if this hitman was not an undercover cop and he was let's just say it was a real hitman, it was going to be $5,000. And she said she didn't have that money to pay a down payment up front. But then if this hitman was to kill Aaron Solomon, that she would pay twice as much after. What did you make of that part of it?
Well, if she doesn't have the money, my first thought was if she doesn't have the money, to pay him up front for even $5,000, how is she going to pay him $10,000? And it sounds like that was for just one person, and she wanted 3 total. So then are we talking about 30,000 or, another 40,000 if you count what the down payment is? I'm not sure. So the only way, if she doesn't have the money for that and she doesn't have the money for attorney other than a public defender at this point, then where is she getting this? And from what I remember being told early on in this was that if Aaron goes, there is a trust fund set up for their daughter, Gracie Solomon. And I would imagine that money would probably, again, speculation here, but money would probably come from that to be able to cover the expenses, either that or a possible, GoFundMe kind of a thing.
I know you've spoke with both Angie and Gracie Solomon on your podcast. I think it was a couple years ago, right? At this point, and we've laid it out. I mean, they've made it's not just words when you're accusing someone of being involved in the murder of someone like they have with the death of Grant Solomon, and then also the accusations of sexual abuse against Aaron Solomon. And he's never been charged. He, through a lawyer's, denied those charges. But I just, when you spoke to them and in communication with them, did you ever think that she would, everything's alleged at this point, but think that she would get to the point where she would actually try to hire a hitman to kill Aaron Solomon?
I did not, because I don't think that reasonable people think about that. And I mean, I know she wanted justice, but I feel like, when she was looking at everything and we were working with her and talking with her, she was trying to go about this entire situation on the up and up. Now, she did claim that there was a lot of corruption in the state of Tennessee, that Aaron had a lot of connections, which is why a lot of this was buried, why Grant's death was not properly investigated, and all these other things. But then one thing had come out where basically there was an accusation that Aaron had sexually abused Gracie during a baseball tournament that Grant was in North Carolina, which allowed the FBI to get involved, which would take it out of Tennessee's jurisdiction. And last I had talked to her with all that stuff going on, I thought that that was the route that they were going to take, the route that they were going to go.
Yeah, and as far as Aaron Solomon's concerned, he was at, to my understanding, he was at the court appearance today. He has been at, it seems, every time Angie Solomon's been in court since this story broke, he's been there, but he doesn't make statements to the media. How would you characterize how Aaron Solomon, for people who are just picking up on this story, it seems like he's there, but you don't hear a lot from him. What's the typical reaction in Nashville to how he's, I don't know if how he's played this is the way to put it, but it's kind of just to see how he's reacted to all of this. Is he just seems like he's a constant presence in the courtroom, but not one who's being outspoken about this.
Yeah, so for people who don't know, Aaron was I think a former Channel 4 or former Channel 5 news anchor. I can't remember which off the top of my
I
head.
think it was
My
4, yeah.
apologies. It was 4, okay. And so he was a public figure, he was a radio host, and he hasn't really done anything in quite some time, but in the Nashville area, which is where I'm at, uh, we really don't hear a whole lot about him. In passing, people will say, "Okay, well, you talk about true crime, you talk about news. Do you know this story?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know this story," and we'll chat a little bit about it. What I find very odd, though, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, is yes, he's made these statements, denied these accusations through his attorneys, but he's never said anything publicly, as you said. And if I had somebody making the accusations against me are being levied against him, which are murder, sexual assault of my child from a very, very young age, I think that it's from the age of 2, and I didn't do it, then I would be out talking to everybody, especially if that person saying all of this was going on Nancy Grace, going on Ashley Banfield, talking to every major influencer, podcaster out there, getting the story. And for him to not tell his side at all, I don't know whether this is a thing that was advised to him by his lawyers or he's just not comfortable or what the deal is. But it's very odd to me because most of the time when you talk about things like this, and there are two parties, and it's a situation where one is saying something about the other and they're denying it, the other party's out there very outspoken about it, and Aaron really has never said anything.
Yeah, and I don't know him obviously personally, and then he hasn't been on television since 2011 in Nashville. But part of what Angie said to this undercover was that that Aaron had, I guess, guns and drugs at his house, and that someone could go and get that. And to me, that just doesn't, from what I understand of a local news anchor, would be someone who had guns and drugs at their house. That just seemed like a bizarre part of this conversation with the undercover.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Tennessee, so having firearms, that's not really
Sure.
out of the
Yeah. Good
question.
point. Yeah.
As far as as far as drugs go, um, I don't know. That was the first time I had ever heard of. She had never, in any of the time that we had talked, ever accused Aaron of doing drugs. Not that I heard, at least. So that's kind of a new thing. So I don't really know what to make of that, or maybe she was
Yeah.
just hoping that it would entice this person to go in there and it's like, hey, these firearms and these drugs have a monetary value, and you can have these when it's done. As something to kind of like sweeten the deal for him is what I'm guessing, speculation that she was trying to allude to.
You've covered this case longer than I have, but as I've been going through it, and we've gone through all the court documents, the back and forth that Aaron and Angie have had in the legal system, and you have this 18-minute video by Gracie Solomon accusing Aaron Solomon. She calls him a monster, and we played part of it, but I mean, she is accusing him of some monstrous things. But Gracie's name is not in the court record. She's not a defendant in any lawsuit or anything like that. Do we know why um, Aaron has not, or I guess, do we know how he's responded to that video? I know he hasn't publicly said it, but it doesn't seem like in court he's pushing back on that particular video, not the allegations, but the video being out there.
So that's a really great question. So Gracie recorded that video, I think, when she was about 12 years old. And the story that Angie had told me about that video was basically that Grant had died, and Gracie and Angie were so in fear of their lives. And Gracie, in particular, came to Angie and said to her, I'm so scared. If something happens to me, I want to make sure that people know my truth, and I want this video out there. And that is the story that Angie told to me. Now, as far as why she might not be named in a court document, Gracie just turned 18, I want to say like 6-ish months ago, give or take. And so she's been a minor up until very, very recently. And that's probably why she's not in it. But as far as now, why Aaron's not pushing back, I really don't know. I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about. It's like, why haven't you made public
Yeah.
statements? These are pretty big allegations. Even JP Miller, who had serious allegations against him, similar allegations, came on and said some things. He talked to Banfield, he talked to me, and Aaron hasn't talked to anybody. And I've even told his family, because his family has come on to my Instagram and talked a bit. And I said, look, if you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. I can give you information to Law and Crime. I can give you information to producers at Banfield. You can talk to one of them, and still just nothing. They always make an excuse as to why he's not going to talk. And I find that very bizarre in this situation.
And I know the last time we talked, you spoke about how you've had some members of his family, it seems, in your comment section on some of the videos that you've put up. I mean, what typically is the line you hear from even though he's not talking, but members of his family when they react to some of the videos you've done?
Yeah, usually it's been things against Angie, against creators. Me specifically, they were like, "You ran your mouth about, Aaron, and now this is all coming out. You're going to learn the truth. Angie's nuts. Angie's crazy." Um, that's kind of the gist and overall of it. And my response to them typically is like, "Well, we have one side of the story. Aaron is welcome to share his. You're welcome to come on." I even offered them. It's like, I think one of them was his sister. Her name is, I believe, Courtney. Um, I was like, you can come on, you can talk to me if you don't want to. Again, same thing that I said before. If you don't want to talk to me, you don't trust me, fine. Let's get you with somebody who you do trust and share what you have to say. And they always deny it. But it's basically the same rhetoric. It's that Angie is crazy, she's insane, she's mentally unstable. And that's basically where the attacks are. That she's coerced Gracie into saying the things that she said, they're completely untrue. And that's kind of what they typically do.
Do we know about any investigation into Aaron related to Gracie's claims? I know he's never been charged and he's denied it, but how much work was done by law enforcement, or has any of that been public as far as whether an investigator looked into the claims that Gracie made in that video?
So what I can tell you is only what was told to me by Angie with one small caveat. So um my understanding was that nobody was really looking into it because of Aaron's connections in Tennessee. When Aaron, who lived in Franklin, which is Williamson County, Tennessee, when all this happened with Grant, it was in Sumner County, which is Gallatin, that his influence came all the way up from Williamson County, 40 miles away, up to Gallatin for them to just brush this under the rug, that they wouldn't give any information, they wouldn't reopen it, they wouldn't have any discussion about this whatsoever, and that basically she was being stonewalled from anybody in Tennessee. She had made accusations against Tennessee's governor, Bill Lee, saying that he was part of the church that Aaron was part of, and all of these high-powered people, including the religious leaders at this church, were all in on this giant cover-up between the assault on Gracie, what happened to Grant, and they were all basically protecting Aaron. So that's kind of what we heard as far as the investigation in Tennessee. And then for outside of Tennessee, um, we heard what I kind of shared earlier, where basically there was allegedly an event that happened at a baseball game involving Gracie and her father. And because that was out of state, that allowed them to get the FBI involved. That again, that was told, that was probably 2.5 years ago, give or take, something like that. And,
Yeah.
you know, nothing that I've heard has ever come of that. The other thing that I can share with you is we were trying to find um, a good attorney for her. And at the time, I was working a lot with Gabby Petito's family, and they have a phenomenal attorney, Pat Riley, who this is kind of the stuff that's up his alley. So I said, hey, why don't you reach out to Pat Riley? And so she claims that she did, and that basically she just didn't like him. She didn't this, he wasn't going to take the case. Um, and I found the conversation that we had after that very, very odd. And then I have since learned, I can't say how, but I've since learned that from my understanding, Pat has no recollection of that conversation whatsoever, so it might not have even happened.
Okay. Yeah, that is an interesting development. And as far as Aaron's connections, was it just because I do think, I mean, I used to work in local news, and I feel like it's a job that, like, when you're in it, you realize it's not like you have the power that maybe people on the outside think you have. Is it because he was a local news anchor that Angie believes that he had these connections through, to the politicians in the area and people in the church? And why would he have, from what she's told you, that he would have this incredible amount of power to cover up something as horrific as the sexual abuse of a child?
Well, as interesting as this, she never said that it was because of his connections for being in the news. It was more alluded to the fact of just who he was, who his family was, the amount of money that the family has, which I don't know. That's an undisclosed amount. Um, and that was why they had these high powered connections. They all went to the same church. They were very involved in the same church. He went, you know, uh, sat next to the governor of Tennessee when he went to church. And that's kind of what he was alluding to, that most of these connections really came from his time, at this particular church with the governor and with all these other politicians and people who are the big players throughout Tennessee.
I know the death of Grant Solomon. Aaron was never charged in that. It was seen to be just a terrible, terrible freak accident. But there were a lot of questions about the investigation and people who felt not just Angie, but just people who followed the story felt like more should have been done to investigate that case. Has there been any movement, especially even in the wake of her bringing this story in a way that nobody condones, but allegedly trying to hire a hitman, and people are suddenly talking about the Solomon family once again? Does it seem that there's any appetite from law enforcement to look into that case once again?
None. And here's the thing I'm going to say too. His death is very, very odd. And I think that it probably does need a larger investigation. The kid had a 5-year-old Toyota Tacoma, and allegedly he's getting his bat out of it. And it pops out of gear, starts rolling backwards. It's an automatic. It's not a manual transmission. Starts rolling backwards while it's in park, drags him down a ditch, and ultimately, kills him. And Toyota has a really good record. I'm not saying that things can't happen, but you would think that if that was the case, Toyota would have been all over it. Nobody had any investigations done, through Toyota. I've seen the photos when they took photos of the scene. The car is still very much in park. And there's also things sitting on the seat that you would think would have tipped over or moved when it went over that edge the way that it did, and it didn't. So there are some things that when you look at the photos from the scene that look really odd. And if I find those photos, I don't mind reposting them on my socials. I'll have to dig for those. But it is very odd that they wouldn't look into it further as to what would have happened, or there wouldn't have even been an investigation into the vehicle itself as to what maybe gave way, and let Toyota know about that if it was some form of manufacturer defect on this 5-year-old car.
And one more for you, Justin, just as we're talking about the hearing that took place today. And I think of initially when you met Angie Solomon and she has this story, Gracie, of course, what she says she went through is horrific. And then through the time that you've known her to now, on a day that we saw her in court, and you hear this audio recording where she's talking to an undercover as if she's going to hire a hitman to kill Aaron Solomon. How has your view of what she has claimed, how has that changed? How has it evolved over time with each development that's happened?
Well, the only way that I can really answer on my opinion of Angie is that every creator, every social media podcaster, everyone who tried to help her, she removed them from her bubble, her circle, her contacts, myself included, as they got too close. She had another individual who was helping raise money for the GoFundMe's, helping to get, various people, news outlets, podcasters, influencers involved. And, he was doing it because he just felt very compelled by the story, and she kicked him to the curb. There was another person who, out of New York, who she was working with him. She actually even flew down for a documentary or interview, and Angie was very apparently being strange about her. And then she stopped hearing from Angie. And I know my personal experience is that we were using, my platform to help raise money for this GoFundMe, to help get Grant Exhumed, to help find this, forensic investigator to recreate the crime scene. And I hadn't heard from her in a while, and I reached out to her. I was like, "Hey, I haven't heard from my followers. Would love an update to know where things are going. I can't keep raising money for you, asking people to donate money if we're not giving them updates as to what this money is going for." Because I'm very, very funny about that. I don't like using my platform to collect funds, but when it's certain situations, I'll do it. And I was just ghosted forever. And the only time I ever heard about from her again is after I had a private discussion with somebody else who knew her. Then she didn't like a couple things, or wanted to clarify a couple things that I said, not publicly, but privately. And then she sent me a whole barrage of messages, and I just kind of stopped responding because it was very frustrating. So that's kind of what changed my view. Now, as far as Gracie goes, my view on Gracie has not changed. Gracie is a very sweet kid, who's had a lot of trauma in her life, no matter how you look at it. And so that hasn't changed at all. But Angie, was kind of frustrating. Like, why would you kick the people to the curb that are trying to help you and help you get justice for your children?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. I think that's incredibly well put. Very insightful, I think, for people who are now just, I mean, this, where you live in Nashville, it's been a big story, but now, especially in the wake of her court appearance today, and you start to hear the audio recording, I mean, this story is starting to get a lot more attention. So Justin Shepard, digital journalist, just in the nick of crime on social media, thank you for joining us. It's great to have your perspective, because you know the people who are involved in this story and you provide a lot of insight and context into what we're seeing in court. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me anytime.
We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. For On the Case, presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.